There are many examples of actors turned directors. Some make many films like Clint Eastwood and Kevin Costner. Some make a select few like Ben Affleck and George Clooney. Others just make one film like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Anna Kendrick. To me, one of the most interesting actor turned directors is Angelina Jolie. Her films are a very mixed bag, but they are very interesting to analyze, and I would say she has a very distinct style in the types of stories that she wants to tell. So let's take a look at her very small yet distinct catalogue of films. Angelina Jolie has done lots of humanitarian work, being in countries that are active war zones, and listening to first-hand accounts of what the people have been through. This very much informs the types of films she makes, with her wanting to bring more attention to certain conflicts. Her first film from 2011 is titled In the Land of Blood and Honey, which is set during the Bosnia War. On why she chose this topic, she said in an interview with PBS NewsHour,
I'd spent the last 10 years traveling the world and going to conflict zones and post-conflict zones and meeting with people who suffered through war and really seeing the state of people who, as I work so hard on, how do you help countries heal, or how do you return people to areas, or how do you help people get past the trauma they faced, you often question, why did it have to go this far? So this question of intervention, this question of just war itself.
Amid the backdrop of this is a love story between Danielle and Angela, who are on opposite sides of the conflict. It's sort of a typical love story between two people who can't really be together. Sound familiar? The problem though is I just found myself not believing this love story, particularly with this war as a backdrop. It's just not plausible. The two leads just have no chemistry together, with the only scene that I felt it in was when they were dancing. You also question if Angela does actually love him. I got that sense at the start of the film, but when they reunite, she is actually there to spy on him, and there is this doubt she is just being performative to him. Yet at the start, she does seem into him, but she is more loyal to her side than him. When they have sex for the first time, it really seems like a scene is missing. We went from her having her hand stepped on to them going at it. This is very quick and very jarring given the situation. Jolie doesn't compromise in showing how brutal the war is, and yeah, the film can be very hard to watch at times. Talking about her depiction of war in the film, she said,
"There's always a question in art, of course, when you do films about war, how much you need to show, what you should show. I think everybody that knows this war, lives through this war, knows that what you see on film is a small piece of how horrible it actually was. There is no film that could create the true horrors of war."
She also included first-hand experiences that she was told about from survivors. She also shows other war crimes, like the killing of children, civilians just getting shot, the forced removal of everyone from their homes, and the mass killing of men. I do like how she shows this. It's very shocking. But I really do have a problem with the love story, because this just never happened, and it's not as interesting as everything else going on in the film. Jolie does have a problem though, with telling and not showing. She makes a few efforts in the film to make the Serbs sympathetic, like when the commander is telling Angela why he hates Muslims and why this war is going on. It would have been more impactful if Jolie showed this, but she doesn't. Watching the film, she has clearly picked a side, despite what she says here.
I didn't want to make it black and white and good guys and bad guys. It was really an intention to let's try to learn from each other and learn about what happens to society, to human beings.
Angela's sister is also in the first half of the film, but then she just disappears. Jolie didn't really do much with her character. As her first film, Jolie is onto something, and it perfectly establishes what kind of films she is interested in. As you will see in her films, she is very much interested in the effect war has on people, and the protagonists in her films have no control in the situation. They're just normal people whose whole life gets turned upside down thanks to a country-shattering conflict. In the Land of Blood and Honey did get mixed reviews when it came out, being called anti-Serbian propaganda. It did get a Golden Globe nomination for film not in the English language. I do have a feeling it got in due to Jolie's name recognition though. Her next directed film from 2014 was Unbroken, about the war experiences of Louis Zapparini from being an Olympic runner to lost at sea to a prisoner of the Japanese, which is primarily what Jolie's film focuses on. His time in the Japanese prison camp and the attempts by prison officer Mutashiro Watanabe to break him. This is the only film Jolie has made where she didn't have a hand in the screenplay, with the Coen brothers, Richard Lagravinis and William Nicholson writing the film. That being said, it is still very much a film about a man in war circumstances out of his control. Once he gets in the war after the Olympics, he is just along for the ride. Jolie is very interested in how he doesn't break down despite the horrific conditions he finds himself in. Faith was a huge part of his life, as Jolie explains.
And there's his faith, and we wanted, and so faith was to be in this film, and it was to be in this film not just as a final chapter, but to make sure it was in the film from the beginning of the film and all through the film.
The only mention of faith is when he pleads to God that if he gets through this, he will devote his life to him. Despite what Jolie said, it doesn't come across in the film. It is not the focus. Of all her films, this is, I would say, the most accessible one she has made. It's very Hollywood in its scenes, how inspirational it is with the swelling music and the relatability to Zapparini. The scene where he is forced to hold up a plank over his head is very intense, and I love how frustrated Watanabe gets because he didn't break him. Also, the scene when he first arrives and they hold a mock race to humiliate him. It shows just how none of this takes away Zapparini's hope and humanity. Roger Deakins did the cinematography, and there are some really stunning shots, but I wouldn't say it's his best work. Visually, the film just doesn't look that interesting to me. Deakins did get a Best Cinematography nomination at the Oscars, and the film got a further 2 nominations for sound mixing and sound editing. This is Jolie's only film to get nominated at the Oscars. It got mixed reviews when it came out. I personally find the film to be good. It's a good story of resilience, hope, and courage under dire circumstances. It is very tropey though, and the music is so overbearing at times, but it's a good effort from Jolie. There were efforts to get it banned in Japan due to how the Japanese are depicted, but nothing came of that. If you want to get into Jolie's films, I would start with this one, because it is her most Hollywood-esque film, and it's a very by-the-numbers biopic. If you have seen any of Clint Eastwood's American hero biops, like Sully or American Sniper, you'll know what you're in for. Her follow-up film to Unbroken is the only film she has made that doesn't fit in with her subject matter style. Of all her directed films, this one really stands out, but in my opinion, it's her most interesting film to analyze. The film is called By the Sea, and she stars in it with her then-husband, Brad Pitt. Wait till you hear what this film is about. A married couple having trouble in their marriage go to a remote seaside village in France to try to fix it. 1 year after this film came out, Jolie filed for divorce, and watching the film knowing that, it's a fascinating look at their marriage. This is also the only time she has been credited as Angelina Jolie Pitt, and she wrote the screenplay too, so it's almost like she is trying to tell Brad Pitt something about their marriage. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Jolie said, "This film, at its core, is about grief, and that grief comes from the loss of my mother." She adds, "This film is about learning to move on." Jolie also claims the film is not autobiographical, though I don't know, something like this seems to have some autobiographical elements. There is a heavy tension in the air when both Pitt and Jolie are on screen. He is an alcoholic writer suffering from writer's block, and she is an ex-dancer who is severely depressed. They are barely speaking to each other. Jolie becomes obsessed with this newly married couple in the room next to them and starts to spend her days watching them through a hole in the wall. They probably remind her of how she and Pitt used to be. Voyeurism is an essential theme in the film, Jolie mainly watches them having sex, and then Pitt joins in and they make this a ritual just to see what they are doing. In turn, this reignites their passion for each other, and the film ends very optimistically. It's not just the voyeurism of Jolie's character in the film though. As a director, she shoots every scene with this voyeuristic style reminiscent of European cinema. I mean, cinema in general is a very voyeuristic medium because you are just watching as well, even watching and listening to me in this video. And Jolie uses this voyeurism to full effect. She is watching this young couple having sex, and we in turn are watching her. Speaking of European cinema, the tone and pacing of this film is also very similar. There are just lots of shots and scenes with not much happening, beautifully shot. I'd say it's Jolie's best looking film, plus the sort of open-ended ending, the grey morality of the characters, and how things just aren't spoon-fed to you. She does a lot of show don't tell, and leaves it up to the audience. I guess she listened to my criticism of In the Land of Blood and Honey. I really like this film. A very sensitive portrait of a marriage collapsing, yet they are still holding on to each other because the love is still there, and all it took was a younger couple to remind them of that. Of all her directed films, this is Jolie's worst rated film, and I honestly don't understand why. I feel like she is the most confident she has been as a director here. She really understands all of these characters because it seems so personal to her. She paints both her and Pitt as very troubled, not communicating their problems to each other, and she shows how both of them are assholes at times to each other, but the love still comes back. The ugly, painful, yet beautiful side of love is shown in all its forms. It's slow-paced, artsy, very European-esque in its style, but it's a very human film, and it's a fascinating look into the mind of Jolie as a writer and director. 2017 saw her go back to her fascination with country-shattering conflicts, with First They Killed My Father, based on Long Eun's memoir of the same name, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Jolie. The film is the true story of Long Eun's childhood in Cambodia, when the Khmer Rouge took over the country. The only other film I have seen to tackle this topic is The Killing Fields from 1984, and like that film, it can also be a tough watch. The entire film is shown from Eung's perspective, and what I love about this framing is that a lot of the bad things that happen are implied. The Killing Fields is very explicit in showing how cruel the regime was, but since we are viewing these events from the perspective of a child, there is an element of uncertainty in what she is seeing. Talking about showing this from the perspective of a child, Jolie said,
"The audience kind of is her, and many times the actors are screaming into camera and the cameras are yelling into camera, so you're having a bit of an experience. And what was interesting was figuring out her POV and how it would grow and change as she would age. Because when you're a child, you kind of look at your toes a lot.
Her mother and father, she can only assume, are killed by the Khmer Rouge because she never sees them again after they are taken away. So she imagines a lot of what could have happened to them. In an eerie scene, she sees a line of monks being taken away, and in a similar vein, seeing people being held up with guns at the checkpoint. We know what happened to them, so seeing this is very disturbing. Jolie has gotten better at show don't tell, and this film is her mastering that. She understands in this situation that just implying cruelty and violence is enough. The cinematography does a superb job at putting you there and in the point of view of a child, since it simulates just how disorientating and confusing the whole situation is. The beginning scene showing the Khmer Rouge taking over the city reminded me of the scene from In the Land of Blood and Honey, where the Serbs raid and force people out of their houses. Unlike that film, she does a brilliant job putting you in that situation thanks to the point of view cinematography. The film did give me very high anxiety, since she is just pushed around so much and goes from camp to camp. She trains to be a soldier at one point too, and after the scenes of violence and cruelty being implied, she comes face to face with the true horrors of war in a really intense sequence where she and her brother and sister run from the battle. This is Jolie's best work as a director. I feel like everything she has learned from her previous films is really elevated here, and she is at the top of her directing craft. She handles the horrors of the Khmer Rouge with such delicacy and respectfully to the victims of the regime. It's a very powerful and intense film. She understands here that what you don't see is just as bad as what you do see, and for that reason I think it's more disturbing than The Killing Fields, since your imagination can be worse than what is actually shown. It's great growth for her, showing too much in The Land of Blood and Honey to implying it in this film. The film was nominated for Foreign Language Film at the Golden Globes and BAFTAs. It was submitted by Cambodia for the Oscars, since Angelina Jolie is a dual citizen of Cambodia, so the submission was accepted, though the film did not get nominated. After a long break to focus on acting, she returned to directing in 2024 with her film Without Blood. Now, this film is not out yet, but it is a return to the country-shattering war dramas she loves so much. It had very mixed reviews, so it seems like a return to the reception of her first film. That's all I can say about it, since there is no way for me to see it yet. But I will see it, since I am really fascinated with Jolie's directed films. I feel she has really come into her own as a filmmaker, and I love the very un-Hollywood risks she takes, making most of her films not in English, for example, and with a local cast. Her goal with her films seems to be to bring more attention to the wars and atrocities that are committed in certain countries that get overlooked. Apart from By the Sea, which is its own thing in her filmography, here is how I rank her films. She has only gotten better with each film, and I highly recommend First They Killed My Father if you can handle the subject matter, that is.